same deal. Fascinating, that issue of leadership and guidance, which we often talk about here on the programme. I'll have more of those views from you later on in the hour, so keep them coming in. But now let's move from that to one of my other favourite segments, which is Good Causes. This is where we shine a spotlight on an individual or a group of individuals who've gone above and beyond just to try and make the world a better place. Well, my next guest is fighting for better mental health provision for the police, following his own experiences after leaving the force. After working with his local MP, he's been promised a meeting with the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, to discuss the issue further. And I'm delighted to be joined by Sam Smith, founder of Green Ribbon Policing. And there you are. A very good afternoon to you, Sam. I want to tempt you into sharing a little more detail. I mentioned your own experiences as a serving officer there. So what specifically prompted you to establish Green Ribbon Policing?
So I served in policing for about 3 years, which doesn't sound a long time, but actually I think now that's probably about the average sort of career path of a police officer due to the nature of policing. I threw myself in it. It was something I always wanted to do, and I loved the job. I worked hours and hours and hours each day, plenty of overtime. But for 1 minute, you are working in an industry. So I came from a sales background, and I was thrown into policing where I was dealing with dead bodies every day, well, not every day, but a lot of days, dealing with a high level of violence and abuse. And it becomes very normal. But what you don't realise is how it affects your mental health and resilience and the way you look at life. And after about 2 years, I started to struggle. I didn't realise I was struggling, but my partner, who had done a master's in psychology, started to see signs she was concerned. And it kind of just snowballed from there. Eventually, I was signed off work by the GP. I ended up moving and did my last bit of policing in the Channel Islands, trying to get that last sort of start to sort of be able to, I guess, stay in policing but have a slightly more wholesome life. But it ended up with me having to leave because, I started to show signs of potential PTSD. And after leaving, I felt deflated, I felt beaten, I felt like a failure. This is something I wanted to do for my whole life. And then I looked into it and found Cambridge University had done a study in 2017, which showed 1 in 5 police officers in the UK, or at least 1 in 5, have PTSD, many undiagnosed. It said that about a police officer every 2 weeks is taking their own life. And I just thought, this is ridiculous. There was no training, there was no input, there was no help or anything about looking after your mental health in this highly traumatic job.
Yeah, let me come in at exactly that point, Sam, because I wanted you to set it out. And I can hear, as I'm sure you probably can metaphorically, people at home saying, well, that's what policing is like. You do come across dead bodies. You do see dreadful traffic accidents. You meet pretty horrible people smuggling people across the channel, this, that and the other. You said towards the end there that it's the support mechanism that's lacking.
Yeah.
Is it also, to put it bluntly, grilling people when you apply to go to Hendon or wherever it was that you trained to spot the fact that nothing wrong with it, that some people will have the capacity for that and others won't? I mean, it seems to me it's just people are taken on, thrown into it, and then not given the support that they deserve. So it's wonky at both ends.
It's the naivety of it all. So when you join policing, yes, you know you're going to do all that, and you're excited for dealing with, the rock and roll of policing. You don't want to just be sitting there to do an office job. That's not why people join policing. But what you don't know is that if you do not look after, if you do not put certain measures in place, the effect it will have on you. So when I joined policing, I was a typical young male police officer where I thought I'm macho, I could handle all of this. I'm not scared about blood. I don't mind if someone throws a punch at me. Well, hey, and all that sort of stuff. But then what actually happens is, as I said, 2 years down the line, suddenly I'm a different person. I didn't see it coming. I have no idea what happened. I didn't see anything any differently. I wasn't emotional about it. It just happens. And what it is every human being has the same sort of consistent brain, and you deal with, on average, the average person, about 4 to 6 major traumas in your life. Police officers are seeing around 400 to 600 traumas in their career. So they are so exposed to trauma the lack of sort of debriefing and sort of resilience, their bodies shut down and their PTSD develops. So what I'm asking for is for when you join, so you've got these 20,000 new officers, I want them all to know it's a fantastic job, an amazing job, a hard job, and you will experience all those things and worse. But what I want you to do is not to neglect your mental health. And I want the government to make it a mandatory standard that every police force in this country has to provide certain provisions. So that's training about mental health, and that's officer well-being, not just public well-being.
Sure.
That's talking about resilience.
Let me come in at that point as well, because I think you know that I've done some work with Oscar Kilo, and in fact I think I've interviewed the author of that very Cambridge report that you referred to. It's a tough question, and people listening won't necessarily like the answer. Why is Oscar Kilo not up to standard, which is the official mental health wellbeing support structure, and why is your organisation required, or do you see them working in parallel?
I love to work them. So Oscar Kilo may see me as a threat, but I am not. I want to basically make Oscar Kilo worthwhile and actually really make it more than just a ticky box exercise. So Oscar Kilo is funded. And it's basically there for all police forces. However, individual forces have to use it. Quite often they have to pay to use certain elements. And because there is no standard or obligation to provide mental health well-being for their officers, and because we all know that money is tight, a lot of it doesn't get used. And quite often they are doing things like, for example, they're really pushing well-being dogs. And I love animals, and I really believe in the well-being that animals can give to people. But you've got 140,000 officers are so busy. You're literally working 12-hour shifts, and you don't even have the time to go to the toilet or have a bite to eat. There is no real time to be seeing a well-being dog, and there is no accountability. So my question to Oscar Kilo is, okay, what you're doing, do you know it's working? Because we are still seeing a ridiculous rate of police suicides. PTSD, as far as I'm aware, hasn't dipped down, and we're still seeing the same amount of people suffering with it. So if we are not actually recording the outcome, just like with the COVID vaccine, if we didn't actually see any improvement, no one's going to want it. So really what I'm saying here is about accountability and consistency, because I could join one force, say Devon or Cornwall, or another force, the Met, and I'd get completely different input for my own well-being, and that's not right.
I couldn't agree with you more on that final point, but I tell you what, we have to leave it there simply because of the clock. But you keep in touch, because I do have a personal interest in this, and my hope is that you get the meeting with Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, and that maybe what you're doing and what Oscar Kilo are doing can maybe reflect on it and thesis, antithesis, synthesis. But for the time being, good to talk to you, Sam. Thank you very much indeed. That's Sam Smith there, who is a former police officer and the founder of Green Ribbon Policing. He's on Twitter. We exchanged messages last night. Look him up and see what he's up to and why he is up to it. It's an intriguing story. Now, we spoke about this topic in depth yesterday as our big story, but now